Back on TYT Sports with Francis and Jason. A fun discussion, bar argument style clip to start the day, Francis.
But we're not going to argue.
We're not going to argue.
It's too mellow. Tuesday mellow morning.
It's a mellow morning. All right, that's fine.
You just came from the surf.
It's true. I got off the ocean this morning. It was beautiful in the water this morning. However, NBA Eastern Conference franchise players. We can do this clip in two parts, an Eastern Conference and a Western Conference. We got this idea off an article Francis found on CBS Sports where they were talking about the best lifers for each team. The problem with that being, Udonis Haslem has played with the Heat his whole life, so he was their best franchise lifer. You can't give it to Wade because now he's on the Bulls. And that was the context of that article. We wanted to do just currently, who's every team's franchise player? Easy for some, incredibly difficult for others. So how we did this, you'll see from card number 1. These are in order of last year's standings during the regular season. So we'll go through that, and we're going to tell you what we think, who we think are the franchise players. Let's get to card number 1. So here we go. Again, in order of last year's standings, the franchise players. I wrote down a couple names for more argument's sake. Cleveland, LeBron James. I love Kyrie Irving. I think you'd be insane to think that LeBron's not the franchise player there right now. Toronto, I know the Raptors fans are very vocal in our comment section, Francis, so I wonder if some side with DeRozan. I wonder if others side with Kyle Lowry. My bet would be Kyle Lowry. Miami Heat, is Bosh going to play? Is he healthy? Whiteside just signed. Interesting topic of conversation. Number 4, the Atlanta Hawks, Dwight Howard, Paul Millsap, and Dennis Schroeder. I guess Dennis Schroeder, but I say that because Dwight Howard just showed up. Is he now your franchise guy? Is it Paul Millsap? But Francis, off of this list, and then the bottom 3 are easy. For Charlotte, Indiana, and Detroit, it's Walker, George, and Drummond. I don't even see an argument outside those guys. The ones I'm curious, Francis, is it going to be Horford in Boston or Isaiah Thomas still? Is it going to be Dwight Howard or Paul Millsap? Is it going to be Bosh or is it going to be Whiteside?
For Boston, it's hard to tell until you see the player fit into that system, whether or not he's going to work. Isaiah Thomas is the franchise player for that team. And again, I actually was curious this morning when you meant franchise players. I mean, when you look up the dictionary, the term franchise, it's almost like a franchise. F-R-A-N-C-H-I-S-E. And it's kind of, for me, it always spoke to me as a business asset. Who's the player that's going to draw the crowd? Who's the one that's going to come in, like, even in the latter years of the Lakers, even though Kobe Bryant wasn't their best player, I would say the last couple of years, he's still the franchise player. Right. Not just because he's the one that was going to fill the seats, but he was the Lakers. He had the aura, right? Yeah. So I was a little confused as to what this meant, and then you clarified. It basically just means the best player on the team, almost the MVP of that team, because it's different. If you were to tell me that I was to go and pick a franchise player for the Golden State Warriors, I'd say undoubtedly Steph Curry, because he's going to fill the seats. He's got that three-point shot that everybody wants to come in and see. Whereas if you were to tell me, who's the team player on that team? Who's the person that they cannot live without? And I'm thinking to myself, Steph Curry's a great shout, but you can make the argument for Draymond Green. You can make the argument that someone is needed in that system, that if you take him out, he's almost irreplaceable, as was seen in the recent finals. The same way would have happened if Steph Curry was to come out. So I get where you now stand, and as when I'm looking at this list, you've got to put in the players that are always, they're just simply the best players. It doesn't matter whether or not they're not the most attractive players at all time. It so happens that most of them are LeBron Jameses of the world. And I think that until Al Horford comes in and we see, which I imagine and I hope that he does hit the heights at the Celtics, Isaiah Thomas is the man who they're going to look at to be their best player going into this season.
I agree. I don't ever mean to underestimate Al Horford. He has the portability of any great player. I actually believe he is still an underrated guy because he's the type of player who plays with such selflessness. He makes his teammates better. He's going to be a fantastic fit, I would think, in that Celtics system because he enables creativity from coaches. He doesn't strangle the creativity of coaches, and Brad Stevens is that guy to start in creating those plays for someone like Horford, who, again, fantastic off the block, turnaround, rebounding, defensive skills, all those things. In transition, he's also not that bad either. Isaiah Thomas, however, really for a while we kind of considered, is he a point guard that can really carry a team to greater heights, as you just mentioned? I think yes, considering he's an all-star worthy player and continues to get to the basket at an alarmingly efficient rate for his size. Easily, you can make the argument for pound best point guard in the league just because he's so small. So I would say it's Isaiah Thomas, unless Al Horford shows up there and he's 20 and 10 guy in, night out, and the reason they get over this hump and make deep runs is because of him. I can see him winning over the hearts of Celtics fans. Let's go also now to the second card of this, because it's the back half of last year's standings, which includes some teams who are going to be better this year, obviously, including my own New York Knicks. But let's get to that second card. This is the AO2. It's the guys. It's not just the guys. It's the teams that didn't finish in the playoffs. So again, some two easy ones. The Nets. You only got Brook Lopez. Jeremy Lin, please. Chicago Bulls is Jimmy Butler. I get that Wade just showed up, and I get that Rajon Rondo just showed up. It's Butler's team. It's been Butler's team for about a year and a half. The Wizards, it's John Wall's team. However, I'm sure there's people in Beal's camp.
Max contract.
The Magic are tough. The Bucks are all in on Point Tentacumpo. The Knicks, that's an actually really difficult one. There's still people who want Carmelo Anthony to be the leader of the team and to show up and play like Olympics Melo. But after 1 year of seeing Porzingis, I would want to build around the unicorn 7-footer, 7-foot 2-inch guy who Kevin Durant hailed as, I haven't seen anything like it. Mm-hmm. I want that guy to be building the team around. Melo had his time as the franchise player. I don't want to underrate Melo as a scorer, obviously. I just don't, again, see him as he ages being the guy to build around. Francis, do you agree, disagree? Also, with some of those other guys, the Sixers, the
thing with, like, it's almost like Carmelo's had his shot at being the franchise player and hasn't delivered yet. And he came in as the franchise player. He was someone that, even though my first kind of argument to this is we need to see how this forms, but he came into a team that were like relying on him to take them to the next level and perform at that ridiculous scoring rate, as we know he can do, week in, week out, in order to take the New York Knicks to a different level. The sense of optimism dropped off from New York. Fans don't see Carmelo Anthony as a savior anymore, and they look at Kristaps Porzingis. It's only natural that someone who, again, they're not as familiar with and they want to explore more can take up that position as the point. The same thing can be said about the 76ers. That completely eradicates my previous argument for Al Horford, because the 76ers haven't got anything to kind of hold them to it. Like Isaiah Thomas has shown consistently, holy shit, he's our best player at the moment.
But the Sixers haven't.
The Sixers haven't had anyone like that. So when you have someone like Ben Simmons come in, I know we've already hyped up this kid to a LeBron-esque level, but you can't blame the 76ers fans. They haven't had anything to kind of grasp onto. No real hope there. So they're like, all right, well, let's just bank on this guy to be our franchise player and see what happens, because the bottom line is we're not going to be any worse off.
Yeah, and Nerlens Noel's been on the trade block and trade rumors for a long time, so it doesn't seem like they're that bought into the Nerlens Noel. And, I mean, Joel Embiid's coming back, which should be interesting given the fact that it's been a lot of time. Hopefully he doesn't become another Greg Oden story. I mean, just watching his workout tapes, he's a talented guy. It was actually the first ever clip I did on TYT Sports was that draft where I mentioned that save for that foot injury. Watch him on Kansas, and you're telling me you're not looking at one of the best possible big man prospects. So if it pans out well and he can stay healthy and he's past these foot injuries, he's not an old guy, he's still young, I would hope he's back in action. He's also one of the best at social media when he photoshops Rihanna into his dates.
Oh, yeah.
Good for Joel Embiid. I'm curious what everyone else thinks. In terms of the franchise players, there's some no-brainers in Jimmy Butler for the Bulls, Point Tentacumpo for the Bucks. But what about the tougher decisions to make? Who do you think is the Eastern Conference's franchise guys? And like, favorite, subscribe to the video and the channel, if you will. It goes a long way. Check out the podcast on TuneIn. Check out TYT Sports on Watchable. We're just taking over. At Francis_Maxwell, at JaceRumor91. We'll see you next time.